This is the third part of the peculiar institution. We begin the third part by taking a look at the profitability of the institution of slavery. And it has been debated as to whether or not this truly was a efficient industry. Down here at the very bottom, the efficiency of slavery as a profitable institution was argued quite some time ago by an author and historian by the name of Ulrich Phillips. And basically the argument here is that there was an inordinate amount of overhead, and this overhead on the plantations really ruined the profit margin. And so the idea was that perhaps slavery really wasn't a profitable institution. So we have to take a look at, this difference in the way it is. Now, given this, probably the best argument and example might have been when George Washington was elected president. He actually had to borrow money to go to his inauguration, which at the time was in New York City. And this is sort of the argument seen down here, is that people that were on plantations, they had what we might say is property wealth, that all of their wealth was vested in the land and the slaves. But when it came to actually having to buy something, like George Washington, to finance his trip up to his own inauguration, he didn't have any cash wealth. So this is kind of the beginning of this argument. However, in the more recent era of taking a look at this, we've actually had a formula, as seen up here in the upper right, which was created by Lee Alston in the economics of the antebellum South, where they're actually, in this formula, you can really actually get from this a profitability margin that is very good. So the argument here is that perhaps slavery was very profitable. Given all of this, the bottom line is there were a lot of slaves, almost 4 million, and if it wasn't profitable, one would think, well, then why was slavery prospering? Perhaps one of the best known of all slave owners was the former president, Thomas Jefferson, seen here, slave owner, and an individual that historically is known to have treated everyone on his plantation, whether slave or not, pretty much as individuals that were not necessarily equal, but were treated well, even to the point that a lot of the individuals there consider themselves quite fortunate to be there. And as we know in recent history, Thomas Jefferson also had a relationship with one of his slaves, Sally Hemings, and this individual here, Isaac Jefferson, perhaps one of his sons and offspring. One thing that did exist and existed quite a bit in the South is the fact that we had a socioeconomic class structure that evolved. And this class structure actually gave one group of individual in the South stature. And that group here would be nicknamed the Pobukra, or the white field hand worker. This was a non-slave individual, obviously, but the only way that they were given any socioeconomic lift in this structure was due to the fact that they, just by virtue of not being a slave, were above the slaves. And so we had a distinct structure here from lower class to middle class to upper class. We also saw in the South a tremendous rise in the abolition movement, or anti-slavery sentiment, and some of the individuals here, and we actually experienced revolt, court cases. So there was a distinct rise against slavery. Ultimately, though, when it's all said and done, the South was separated from the North with the Mason-Dixon Line.